The summer sun beat down as our minivan cruised along the highway. My husband Jake sat beside me in the passenger seat, tapping his fingers to the radio while our kids Emma and Tyler played I Spy in the back. We were 2 hours into our 3-hour journey to my parents' country estate for the first family reunion in years. I was nervous, but hopeful, mentally rehearsing peaceful conversations after so much tension. Suddenly, Jake's phone pinged. His face drained of color as he read the screen. His eyes widened with unmistakable fear. "Turn the car around." "Now," he whispered urgently. I was stunned. "Why?" "Just turn around, please." I trusted him, and it saved us. I checked the rearview mirror before carefully pulling onto the shoulder. Emma stopped her game and leaned forward. "Mommy, why are we stopping? Are we there yet?" "No, sweetie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to go back home for a little while." "But what about Grandma and Grandpa?" Tyler whined. "And the swimming pool?" Jake turned around with a forced smile. "We'll see them another time, buddy. Right now, we need to head home." I put the car in drive and made a U-turn at the next opportunity. My mind raced with questions, but something in Jake's expression told me to wait until we were alone. The children sensed the tension and fell silent, an unusual state for our typically chatty 8- and 6-year-olds. We had been planning this reunion for months. After 3 years of minimal contact with my family, this weekend was supposed to be our fresh start. My parents, Richard and Margaret Wilson, came from old money and had never fully accepted Jake. He grew up middle class in a small town, worked his way through state college, and became a high school history teacher. In their eyes, he wasn't ambitious enough for their daughter. The breaking point came during our last Thanksgiving visit. My father had made several cutting remarks about Jake's career choice, suggesting he had settled for mediocrity. After dinner, Jake had stormed out, taking the kids to a hotel for the night. I stayed behind, torn between my husband and my parents, as I'd been so many times before. It had taken me nearly 6 months of weekly phone calls and careful relationship repair to get everyone to agree to this reunion. The kids were excited to see their cousins and grandparents. I'd spent days packing thoughtful gifts and preparing mentally to navigate any conflicts that might arise. Jake had reluctantly agreed to go for my sake, though his enthusiasm never matched mine. As we drove in silence, I noticed Jake checking his rearview mirror frequently, as if expecting to be followed. "Jake, you have to tell me what's going on," I finally said when we were about 30 minutes from home. "You're scaring me." He glanced back at the kids, who were now absorbed in their tablets. "Not yet," he whispered. "When we get home." The rest of the drive felt eternal. When we finally pulled into our driveway, I asked Emma to take her brother inside to pick out a movie. As soon as the front door closed behind them, I turned to Jake. "Tell me. Now." He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and showed me a text message from my sister Amanda. "Don't come. Not safe." "That's it." I stared at the 3-word text. "Amanda sent you this. When?" "About 10 minutes before I asked you to turn around," Jake said, running his hand through his dark hair. "I didn't show you right away because I was afraid you wouldn't believe me." I felt a stab of hurt that he would think that, but deep down I understood. For years I'd chosen to see the best in my family, despite evidence to the contrary. I'd made excuses for their behavior, especially toward Jake. "Have you tried calling her back?" I asked, already pulling out my own phone. 5 times. It goes straight to voicemail. I dialed Amanda's number and got the same result. Next, I tried my parents' house line and both their cell phones. Nothing. "Something's wrong," I murmured, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. "Amanda wouldn't send something like this as a joke." Jake nodded. "I'm thinking we should call the police, ask them to do a welfare check." I hesitated. What if it's nothing? My dad has connections with the local police department. If we send cops to their house during their big reunion for no reason, "Deb, your sister said it's not safe." That's reason enough. I knew he was right, but years of conditioning to avoid making a scene or embarrassing the family made me pause. Let me try a few more people first. I called 3 cousins and an aunt. No answers. It was as if the entire family had gone dark. Let me see what I can find out, Jake said, taking out his laptop. Why don't you take the kids next door to play with the Miller children? I texted Susan already, she's expecting them. Grateful for his quick thinking, I gathered the kids and their overnight bags and walked them to our neighbor's house. When I returned, Jake was scrolling through social media. Look at this, he said, turning the screen toward me. Your cousin Patrick posted this 2 hours ago. The photo showed people gathered in my parents' expansive backyard. Everything looked normal. A catered spread on long tables, children playing on the lawn, adults mingling with drinks. But something felt off. The smiles seemed forced. And in the background, I noticed men I didn't recognize standing at the perimeter of the property. Who are those guys? Jake pointed to what I'd already noticed. Security, maybe Dad sometimes hires them for big events. Jake zoomed in on one man. Security guards don't usually wear ceremonial pins. I squinted at the small gold emblem on the man's lapel. Something about it seemed vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. I'm calling Thomas Jake, decided, referring to his friend who worked as a police officer in the neighboring county. 20 minutes later, Jake's phone rang. He put it on speaker. I drove by the property, Thomas said. Everything looks normal from the outside. I told the guard at the gate I was delivering a package that needed a signature, so they let me in. Did you see my sister? I asked anxiously. I asked for Amanda specifically. A woman came to the door who matched the photo you sent. Physically, she seemed fine, but she was acting weird. Nervous. When I mentioned I was a friend of Jake's, she got really pale and said she never sent any text messages today. Then your father came to the door and was super friendly, invited me to stay for a drink. The whole thing felt off. What do you mean by off? Jake pressed. Hard to describe. Everyone was smiling too much. Like when you walk into a room and people have just been talking about you. And there were a lot of guys who didn't look like family standing around watching everyone. A chill ran down my spine. What do we do now? Nothing illegal has happened that I can see, Thomas said cautiously. But I've got a patrol car doing regular drive-bys of the property tonight. I'll call you if anything changes. After hanging up, Jake and I sat in silence for a moment. I need to figure out what's going on, I said finally. I'm going to look through some old family photos, see if I can identify that pin or those men. As I headed for the attic, Jake called after me, Deb, whatever this is, we'll figure it out together. For the first time that day, I felt a small measure of relief. Whatever was happening with my family, at least, Jake and I were united. The attic was stuffy despite the central air conditioning that cooled the rest of the house. Dust particles danced in the slanted afternoon light as I pulled the chain on the bare bulb overhead. Cardboard boxes labeled in my neat handwriting lined the walls, Christmas decorations, baby clothes, tax documents. I moved toward the far corner where I kept family mementos. I wasn't sure what I was looking for exactly. The gold pin Thomas had described nagged at me like a half-remembered dream. As I shifted boxes, I uncovered a trunk I hadn't opened in years. It contained items from my childhood bedroom, things I'd brought with me when Jake and I first married, but had never fully unpacked. Inside, beneath yearbooks and swimming trophies, I found a stack of leather-bound journals. I recognized them immediately as my mother's. She had always kept journals, writing in them each night before bed. I'd taken these particular volumes years ago during a visit home, after finding them hidden in a compartment beneath her vanity. I'd meant to return them, but had forgotten they existed until this moment. Guilt pinched at me as I opened the earliest one, dated 25 years ago. My mother's elegant script filled the pages with mundane details of dinner parties and charity functions. I flipped forward, impatiently scanning for anything unusual. Halfway through the second journal, the tone changed. Richard brought me to my first heritage meeting today. I was nervous, but everyone was so welcoming. The Sinclairs have been members for generations, and Patricia says it's changed her life. The values they espouse are exactly what I've been searching for. Family loyalty above all, preservation of tradition, purity of legacy. Richard says it will help us build the right kind of future for our children. I felt my heart rate quicken. I'd never heard my parents mention any heritage group. I continued reading, flipping through pages, finding more references. Monthly pledge ceremony tonight. The ritual was beautiful. Afterward, Richard was approached about joining the inner circle. This could mean everything. For our status within Heritage, Amanda is still too young, but the elders say Deborah might be ready for preliminary introduction next year. Richard is pleased. Concerning reports about the Lawson family, 3 generations of membership, and now Thomas Lawson is questioning the financial commitments. The elders are discussing how to handle the situation. A memory surfaced being 9 years old, waking up to find my parents dressed in formal attire in the middle of the night. My mother tucking me back into bed, whispering that they were attending grown-up matters. The same gold pin I now recognized from the photo had glinted on my father's lapel. I gathered the journals and hurried downstairs to find Jake. He was at the kitchen table, laptop open, deep in research. I found something we both said simultaneously. "You first," I urged. Jake turned his computer screen toward me. "I've been looking into any groups called Heritage connected to your parents' social circle. There's a private organization called American Heritage Preservation Society that several of your parents' friends are linked to. On the surface, it looks like a genealogy club for wealthy families, but there are some weird rumors about it online." "What kind of rumors?" "Extreme isolationist views, pressure to maintain pure bloodlines, financial control of members. Some former members have tried to speak out, but retracted their statements after being sued for defamation." I placed the journals on the table. "My mother was writing about a group called Heritage. Listen to this." I read him several passages, including concerning mentions of purification rituals and commitment ceremonies. As we were discussing this, Jake's phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello," he answered cautiously. He quickly put it on speaker. "Deborah, are you there?" It was Amanda's voice, hushed and shaky. "Amanda, are you okay? What's going on?" I nearly shouted. "I can't talk long. They think I'm in the bathroom. I'm using a burner phone." "What's happening?" "Your text to Jake. They're planning an initiation ceremony tonight. For the children." Her voice cracked. "Including yours." My blood ran cold. "What kind of ceremony?" "The kind that binds them to Heritage for life. Listen, I didn't know until recently how deep this goes. The family traditions, the strange meetings. It's all part of it. Dad's one of the leaders now. Amanda, you need to get out of there." "I can't yet. There's something else you need to know. The ceremonies. They use something. Not just words and symbols. Some kind of substance. That's why I told you it wasn't safe." "Drugs?" Jake asked sharply. "I don't know exactly. But last month, Cousin Ellie's son got sick after a blessing ceremony. Really sick. Hospital sick." "Have you gone to the police?" I asked. "The local police chief is a Heritage member," Amanda whispered. "Look, I have to go. Be careful who you trust." The line went dead. Jake and I stared at each other, the implications sinking in. My mind was reeling, trying to reconcile the parents I thought I knew with what I was learning. "We need to know more," I said finally. "I think I remember seeing that pin before when I was young." I closed my eyes, forcing myself to recall suppressed memories. Midnight whispers outside my bedroom door. Strange chanting from my father's study late at night. Cousins who suddenly stopped attending family functions after disappointing. The older generation. "I think I need to look into my father's background more carefully," I said. Jake nodded grimly. "I can help with that." By evening, we had uncovered disturbing patterns. Jake's research revealed that my father had quietly purchased several remote properties over the past decade through shell companies. Public records showed large donations to obscure educational foundations that had no visible programs or results. Most disturbing was what we found in my mother's later journals. A symbol appeared repeatedly on certain pages. A stylized tree with roots that formed an unbroken circle. The same symbol was on the gold pin from the photos. "I've seen this before," I whispered, tracing the drawing. "In my father's study. He has a ring with this emblem." As I continued reading the journals, I found references to family members who had left the Heritage group. With growing horror, I began cross-referencing names with online obituaries. "Jake," I said, my voice barely audible. In the last 15 years, 6 people in my extended family who left the group died within a year of their departure. Car accidents, suicide, unexpected illness. That could be coincidence, Jake said, but his expression showed he didn't believe it. All ruled accidents or natural causes, I continued. But the timing. A notification pinged on Jake's laptop. He had set up alerts for news related to my family's name. It's a social media post from your cousin, Stephen, Jake said. Posted an hour ago. The photo showed children gathered around a table at my parents' estate. The caption read, "Preparing the next generation for their special night. Family traditions matter. Number, heritage never dies." In the background, barely visible, was a table with ceremonial cups and a crystal decanter containing an amber liquid. My phone rang, breaking the heavy silence. It was our neighbor, Susan. "Deborah, I thought you should know there's a black SUV that's driven past your house 3 times in the last hour." The same car. I noticed because the windows are so darkly tinted. "Thanks, Susan. Keep the kids inside, okay? And call us if you see it again." I hung up and looked at Jake, fear coiling tightly in my chest. We need to talk to Amanda directly, I decided. Not over the phone. Face to face. We left immediately for Amanda's apartment across town, first making sure Susan would keep the children overnight. The 30-minute drive felt like hours, my mind churning with possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. What if we're overreacting? I asked Jake as we neared Amanda's building. What if this heritage thing is just some weird social club my parents are into? Jake's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Social clubs don't send people to monitor their members' houses. They don't make children sick with unknown substances. And they definitely don't have a pattern of former members dying mysteriously. He was right, but part of me still wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation. These were my parents, after all. The people who had taught me to ride a bike, who had attended every school play, who had helped pay for my college education. We parked in the visitors section of Amanda's apartment complex and hurried to her 3rd-floor unit. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. "Amanda, it's Deborah and Jake." The neighbor across the hall opened her door a crack. "If you're looking for Amanda, she left in a hurry about 2 hours ago. Packed a bag. Seemed upset." "Did she say where she was going?" Jake asked. The woman shook her head. "But some men in suits were here earlier asking about her. They didn't look friendly." Jake thanked her and pulled me aside. "We need to see if we can get into her apartment. Break in." "That's illegal, Jake. Not if we have reason to believe she might be in danger." And we do. I remembered Amanda's spare key hidden above the doorframe for emergencies. Reaching up, I felt around and found it still there. Inside, Amanda's apartment was in disarray. Drawers pulled out, papers scattered across the floor, laptop missing. Someone had been searching for something. "Jake, look at this," I called from the bedroom. A framed photo of our family had been smashed, glass shards littering the dresser. But underneath the broken frame was a USB drive deliberately placed. "She left this for us to find," Jake said. We hurried back to our car and plugged the drive into Jake's laptop. It contained dozens of files, financial records of the Heritage Group membership lists, and detailed descriptions of their rituals. Most disturbing were documents labeled cleansing protocols that outlined methods for managing dissent within bloodlines. "They're not just controlling their members financially," Jake said grimly. "They're systematically isolating anyone who questions them, cutting them off from family support, and in some cases." He didn't need to finish the sentence. We both understood the implication. My phone rang. Unknown number again. "Hello?" "Mrs. Reynolds." An unfamiliar male voice. "This is Officer Daniels from County Security. We're at your house responding to an alarm trigger." My heart jumped. We didn't have a security system. "I didn't call any alarm company," I said carefully. "Nevertheless, we need you to return home immediately. Your parents are here as well." Quite concerned. Jake was watching my face. I put the phone on mute. "Someone's at our house claiming to be security. Says my parents are there." "Hang up," Jake said immediately. "It's a trap." I unmuted the call. "We'll be right there." I lied, then ended the call. Immediately, I dialed Susan next door. She answered on the first ring, voice hushed. Deborah, there are people at your house. Your parents, I think, and some men in suits. They came to my door asking about the children, saying there was a family emergency and they needed to take them for a surprise trip to see you at the hospital. My blood froze. Susan, listen to me. Don't let anyone take my children. Not my parents, not anyone. We're on our way. Call the police. The state police, not local, and tell them there are intruders trying to take children. We raced back across town, Jake breaking every speed limit. When we pulled onto our street, we saw my parents' Mercedes in our driveway and two unfamiliar black SUVs parked on the street. We stopped a few houses down. Stay in the car, Jake said. I'm calling Thomas. No time, I replied, already opening my door. Those are my children. I marched toward our house, fueled by a protective rage I'd never felt before. As we approached, the front door of Susan's house opened, and my father emerged with Tyler struggling in his arms. My mother followed, trying to coax Emma, who was clinging to Susan's leg. Stop right there, I shouted. My father turned, his expression shifting from determination to a practiced smile. Deborah, darling. There you are. We were so worried when you didn't arrive at the reunion. Put my son down. Now, don't be dramatic, dear. We were just taking the children for ice cream since you were delayed. His tone was soothing, the voice he'd used to calm my childhood fears, but now it sent chills down my spine. Tyler, come here, I called. My son wriggled free and ran to me, burying his face in my legs. What are you doing, Dad? Breaking into my house. Trying to take my children without permission. We were concerned, my mother interjected, her perfectly manicured hand reaching for Emma, who shrank back. When you didn't arrive and weren't answering calls, we thought something might have happened to you. So you decided to take my children without contacting me. Without even leaving a note. My voice rose. I know what's going on, Mom. I know about Heritage. A flash of panic crossed my mother's face before she composed herself. I don't know what you're talking about. The ceremonies. The rituals. The special night you had planned for my children. My father's facade cracked slightly. His voice lowered. You don't understand what you're interfering with, Deborah. This is about protecting our bloodline, our legacy. Your children are part of that legacy. My children are not your property, I snapped. And they will never be part of whatever sick tradition you're perpetuating. You've always been difficult, my father said coldly. Just like Amanda. We had such hopes for you both. Where is Amanda? Jake demanded. My father ignored him, addressing only me. This rebellion is beneath you, Deborah. You've always understood the importance of family, of tradition, not traditions that harm children, I replied. I've read Mom's journals. I know about Ellie's son getting sick. I know about the cleansing protocols. My mother paled. Richard, she knows. Get in the car, Margaret, my father ordered. To me, he said, this isn't over. The children need their heritage, their birthright. What they need is to be safe from you, Jake said, stepping forward. Leave now or we're calling the police. You've never understood our family, Jacob. My father sneered. You're not one of us. You never will be. Thank God for that, Jake replied. As if on cue, police sirens wailed in the distance. The men in suits quickly moved to their SUVs. Think carefully about your next move, Deborah, my father said, as he backed toward his car. There are consequences to rejecting your heritage. Is that a threat? I asked. It's a reality, he replied. Then turned and walked away. My mother hesitated, looking torn. For a moment I thought she might stay, might choose us over whatever hold my father and Heritage had on her. But then she followed him to the car. As they drove away, I gathered my children in my arms, shaking with a mixture of relief and fear. The confrontation was over, but I knew this was just the beginning of our fight. Inside Susan's house, we thanked her profusely for protecting the children. Your father said you were in a car accident, Susan said, still shaken. That you'd asked them to take the children to the hospital. But something felt wrong. You saved them, I said, hugging her. Thank you. We settled the children in our living room, with a movie, making sure all doors and windows were locked. Jake called Thomas to update him and request additional patrols of our neighborhood. Just after midnight, as we were discussing our next steps, a soft knock came at the back door. Jake grabbed a baseball bat from the closet, while I checked the security camera we'd installed the previous year. "It's Amanda," I gasped. We rushed to let her in. My sister stumbled through the door, exhausted and disheveled. A bruise darkened her left cheek and her hands shook as she clutched a backpack to her chest. "They know I took the files," she whispered. "They know I warned you." Amanda collapsed onto our couch, her normally perfect appearance in complete disarray. I brought her water and an ice pack for her bruised face while Jake checked outside to make sure she hadn't been followed. "What happened to you?" I asked, sitting beside her. "I managed to slip away during the confusion when you didn't show up." Amanda explained, her voice hoarse. "But Dad suspected I had warned you. He had Brian and some of the other men search my apartment while I was still at the estate. When they found some files missing, She touched her cheek gingerly. "He lost control. I'd never known our father to be physically violent. The revelation stunned me. Dad hit you. He said I had betrayed the bloodline, that I was dead to him now." Tears welled in her eyes. I ran, hid in Melissa's garden shed until dark, then took her car. Jake returned, locking the door behind him. "Streets are clear for now, but we should assume they know you're here, Amanda." My sister nodded, pulling her backpack closer. "I brought everything I could find. Financial records, member lists, ceremony protocols." She looked at me with haunted eyes. "Deb, the children's ceremony tonight wasn't just an initiation. It was going to be much more." "What do you mean?" "They've become more extreme over the past few years. Dad and the inner circle believe they need to ensure absolute loyalty from the younger generation. The substance they use in the ceremonies, it's not just symbolic. It creates a dependency, makes people more compliant." "They're drugging people?" Jake asked incredulously. Amanda nodded. "A combination of pharmaceuticals and some plant-based compound. The effects are subtle at first. Mostly psychological. Increased suggestibility. Emotional attachment to the group, fear of separation. But with repeated exposure, like what happened to Ellie's son," I whispered. "He had an adverse reaction. Most people don't. They just become devoted, unquestioning." A terrible thought occurred to me. "Mom." Amanda's expression confirmed my fear. "She's been participating in the rituals for decades, Deb. All the wives have. It's how they maintain control of the bloodlines." Jake paced the living room, processing this information. "We need to take this to the authorities. The FBI, not local police." "With what evidence?" Amanda challenged. "Heritage has existed for generations. They have judges, politicians, and law enforcement in their ranks. They're careful to make everything appear legal on paper." "The USB drive you left," I reminded her. "The financial records might show illegal activity." "It's a start," Amanda conceded. "But we need more. Someone willing to testify about the drugging, the coercion." "Like you," Jake suggested. Amanda paled. "They'd destroy me." "You don't understand how powerful these people are." "I know exactly how powerful they think they are," I said firmly. "But they're not above the law." Amanda stayed with us that night, sleeping fitfully on our couch. The next morning, Jake contacted his friend Thomas again, this time to discuss federal-level connections who might help investigate Heritage without local interference. Meanwhile, I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my cousin Sarah, who had left the family abruptly after college and changed her name. I'd found her through social media months ago, but had respected her apparent desire for privacy. Now I needed her perspective. After several attempts, Sarah agreed to meet us at a cafe 2 towns over. She arrived wearing sunglasses and a hat despite the cloudy day, scanning the room nervously before sitting down. "I never thought you'd leave them," she said by way of greeting. "You were always the perfect daughter." "I didn't know what I was perfect at," I replied. "Not until recently." Sarah removed her sunglasses, revealing tired eyes. "How much do you know?" "Enough to be terrified." "Amanda's shown us the ceremony protocols, the financial records." Sarah nodded. But you haven't experienced it. The programming. The way they get inside your head. Is that why you left? I left because I saw what happened to people who stayed. How empty they became. Just vessels for heritage traditions. She leaned forward. It took me 3 years of therapy to stop hearing my father's voice in my head telling me I was nothing without my bloodline. That's what they do. They make you believe you have no identity outside the group. And the substances they use in the ceremonies, Jake asked. Sarah's hands trembled slightly. I still have nightmares. The sacred wine they give during major rituals. It creates this feeling of euphoria and connection, makes you believe you're part of something transcendent. But it's all chemical, all control. How did you break free? I asked. My college roommate noticed the changes in me after family gatherings. How I'd return docile, then anxious, then desperate to go home again. She helped me see what was happening. Sarah's expression hardened. I cut contact completely. Changed my name. Moved across the country. Even then they found me twice. Sent people to bring me home. As we talked, Sarah provided crucial context for the fragments of information we'd gathered. Heritage had begun centuries ago as a way for wealthy families to protect their assets through strategic marriages and business alliances. Over generations, it had evolved into something more controlling, more cult-like in its approach. Richard, my father, had risen through the ranks by expanding their financial operations and strengthening their influence in local politics. The current generation of leaders believes the outside world is corrupting bloodlines that have been pure for centuries, Sarah explained. They're desperate to maintain control as more young people question their methods. We parted with Sarah's promise to consider making a formal statement to authorities, though her fear was palpable. Back home, we found Amanda on Jake's laptop, organizing the evidence from the USB drive into coherent files. Your boyfriend called, she told me. 3 times. I frowned in confusion. My what? Amanda raised an eyebrow. Tall guy, sandy hair, law degree. Said his name is David. Relief washed over me. Amanda, that's your boyfriend. She blinked. Right. Sorry. I'm so tired I'm getting confused. She massaged her temples. David said he's been reviewing the financial documents I sent him. He thinks there's enough evidence of tax fraud and illegal business practices to interest federal investigators. This was our first piece of good news. David was a corporate attorney who specialized in financial crimes. Exactly the expertise we needed. The harassment began that evening. First calls from family members, some concerned, others angry or threatening. Then an email from my father's attorney suggesting that Jake and I were suffering from shared delusions and demanding we bring the children to a family counselor of their choosing. The next morning, Jake discovered someone had slashed our car tires overnight. 2 days later, an anonymous complaint was filed with Child Protective Services claiming we were neglecting our children. The caseworker who visited clearly recognized the complaint as frivolous, but the message was clear: heritage could disrupt our lives at will. Most disturbing was what Emma found on her backpack after school. The same symbol from my mother's journals drawn in red marker. They had gotten to my daughter's school. Nowhere felt safe. 1 week after our confrontation at the house, Jake discovered spyware on both our phones and the children's tablets, all devices that had been gifts from my parents last Christmas. They've been monitoring us for months, he said, showing me the program he'd uncovered, tracking our locations, possibly listening to conversations. The realization that we'd been under surveillance hit me like a physical blow. I thought of all the conversations we'd had about the reunion, all the times we'd discussed my parents in our own home, never suspecting they might be listening. We need to end this, I said, a steely resolve forming in my chest. Not just protect ourselves, stop them. For good. Over the next 2 weeks, we developed a strategic plan. First, we secured our home and digital presence. New phones, upgraded security system, camera monitoring. Jake took leave from his teaching job to stay with the children, never leaving them alone. We enrolled them in therapy to help process their confusion about their grandparents' behavior. Amanda moved into our guest room, too afraid to return to her apartment. Her boyfriend David became our legal advisor, working tirelessly to organize the evidence into actionable complaints for federal authorities. With Thomas's help, we made contact with an FBI agent who specialized in financial crimes and cult-like organizations. Agent Ramirez listened to our story with professional detachment, asking pointed questions about Heritage's financial structure and coercive practices. What you're describing has elements of both a cult and an organized crime family, she noted. The challenge will be penetrating their wall of legitimacy. Many of these organizations operate for decades because they're careful to maintain a respectable facade. They drugged children, I reminded her. They've threatened us, stalked us, tried to abduct our kids. And we'll need evidence of all of that, she replied. The financial records are a good start. Bank statements showing large transfers without legitimate business purposes. Tax documents that don't align with actual activities. But for the more serious allegations, we need someone from the inside to testify, Jake finished. We'd been building toward this moment. Amanda had agreed to make a formal statement, but we knew her testimony alone might not be enough. We needed someone from the inner circle. There's one more option, I said quietly. My mother. Jake looked surprised. Your mother. After everything she's done, I've been thinking about what Amanda said. About the women being drugged for decades. What if my mother is as much a victim as anyone else? 2 days later, I learned that my parents would be attending a charity gala at the Windsor Hotel downtown. It was a public event. One where my father would be maintaining his respectable community image. The perfect opportunity for a confrontation. I spent hours preparing what I would say, how I would approach my mother. Jake and Amanda helped me anticipate every possible reaction, every counter-argument. David advised me on how to legally record any conversation. The night of the gala, I dressed carefully in a simple black dress, formal enough for the event but not drawing attention. Jake dropped me at the hotel entrance, planning to wait nearby in case things went wrong. Inside the ballroom glittered with wealth and influence. I recognized many faces from family gatherings, now seeing them in a new light. How many were willing participants in Heritage? How many were coerced? I spotted my father holding court near the bar, a circle of admirers hanging on his words. My mother stood slightly apart, smiling politely at passers-by. Even from a distance, I could see the emptiness in her expression. I approached her from behind, touching her elbow gently. Mom. She turned her practiced smile, freezing when she recognized me. Deborah. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you, I said quietly. Alone. Your father will be very upset if he sees you. I don't care. This is important. Please. Something in my tone must have reached her. She glanced toward my father, then nodded slightly. 5 minutes. The terrace. I followed her through the French doors onto the deserted hotel terrace. The night air was cool. The city lights spread out below us. You shouldn't have come, my mother said, wrapping her arms around herself. You've made your choice very clear. Have I? Or did Dad make it for me when he tried to take my children? She flinched. He was worried about them, about their connection to their heritage. Their heritage, or heritage with a capital H, I countered. I know everything, Mom. The ceremonies, the drugging, the manipulation. I've read your journals. Her face paled. You had no right. I had every right to protect my family. Just like you should have protected yours. I did protect you, she insisted. The world is dangerous, Deborah. Heritage keeps us safe. Connected. Connected. Is that what you call it when Dad hits Amanda for warning me? When he tries to abduct my children? When he has people follow me and spy on my home? My mother's composure wavered. Amanda. He said she was visiting friends in Boston. She's been staying with me since she escaped, with a bruised face and terrified for her life. I pulled out my phone and showed her a picture of Amanda's injury. My mother stared at the image, a tremor passing through her. Richard wouldn't. He did. And he'll do worse if we don't stop him. I took a deep breath. Mom, how long have you been drinking this sacred wine during ceremonies? She blinked rapidly. That's private. Sacred. It's drug-laced manipulation. It's how they control you. All the wives, all these years. That's not true, she whispered, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. When was the last time you made a decision Dad didn't approve of? When was the last time you even wanted to? Her hands fluttered anxiously. This is absurd. Richard has always wanted what's best for our family. For Heritage, I corrected. Not for you. Not for me or Amanda. You don't understand what you're talking about. Then explain it to me. Explain why my children needed to be initiated with unknown substances. Explain why people who leave the group end up dead within a year. Her eyes widened in genuine shock. Dead. What are you talking about? I listed the names of family members who had died under suspicious circumstances after leaving Heritage. With each name, my mother grew paler. Accidents, she murmured. They were accidents. 6 accidents, in 15 years. All former members. What are the odds, Mom? She swayed slightly and I guided her to a bench. For several moments, she sat in silence, staring at her trembling hands. I never wanted this for you girls, she finally said, her voice small. In the beginning, Heritage was about family pride preserving traditions. Then Richard became involved with the inner circle, and everything changed. The ceremonies became more frequent, more intense. And the drugs, she nodded slowly. I knew something was in the ceremonial drinks. It made me feel peaceful, compliant. I told myself it was just herbs, something natural. I never thought. She looked up at me, tears filling her eyes. Have I been drugged all these years? I think so, Mom. And I think deep down you've known something was wrong. She covered her face with her hands. What have I done? What have I allowed to happen? You can help stop it, I said gently. You can help us take down Heritage before they hurt anyone else. She lowered her hands, terror replacing her tears. You don't know what they're capable of. What Richard is capable of, I'm beginning to understand. But I also know what I'm capable of. I will do whatever it takes to protect my children, to protect Amanda, and to free you if you'll let me. For the first time in my adult life, I saw my mother, really saw her. Not as the perfect, polished woman who had raised me with strict rules and high expectations, but as someone trapped in a system designed to break her will. What would I need to do, she asked quietly. Testify. Tell the authorities everything you know about Heritage. The financial operations, the drugging, all of it. He'll destroy me. Not if we destroy Heritage first. Our conversation was interrupted by the terrace doors opening. My father stood framed in the doorway, his expression darkening when he saw us. Margaret, he said coldly. The Hansons are asking for you. My mother's stiffened years of conditioning, visibly taking hold. Of course, Richard. I was just getting some air. With our daughter who betrayed her family. He turned his gaze to me. You have some nerve showing up here, Deborah. I stood my ground. I came to speak with Mom. She deserves to know what you've done to Amanda. Your sister is confused. Unwell. Just as you appear to be. His voice remained smooth, controlled. The voice that had dominated boardrooms and family gatherings alike. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years, I replied. Clear enough to gather evidence of everything Heritage has been doing. The financial fraud, the drugging, the intimidation. A flicker of concern crossed his face before his mask of confidence returned. Childish fantasies. You always did have an active imagination. Tell that to the FBI, I said. Agent Ramirez sends her regards. His eyes narrowed dangerously. You've made a serious mistake. No, Dad. You made the mistake when you came after my children. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I built everything we have. Our position, our influence. I won't let you destroy it with these delusions. They're not delusions if I have evidence. Witness statements? Financial records? You have nothing, he hissed. I have Mom, I replied, glancing at my mother who stood frozen between us. And Amanda, and others who are ready to come forward. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your mother knows where her loyalty lies. Don't you, Margaret? My mother looked from him to me, conflict evident in her expression. For a moment, I feared she would retreat to the safety of compliance as she had for decades. Instead, she straightened her shoulders. I think I'd like to leave early tonight, Richard. His expression hardened. We have guests. They'll understand. I'm not feeling well. It was a small act of defiance, but I could see the rage it triggered in my father. His hand twitched at his side as if he might grab her right there. Think carefully, Margaret, he warned. About everything we've built together. About your place in the family. My mother's voice trembled but didn't falter. I am thinking about family. My daughters. My grandchildren. In that moment, I knew we had won a critical ally. My father must have realized it too, because his mask of civility slipped completely. You'll regret this, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Both of you. No, Dad, I replied. You'll regret ever threatening my family. As we left the gala, my mother leaning heavily on my arm, I texted Jake to pick us up at the side entrance. By morning, my mother had given her first statement to Agent Ramirez, recounting decades of heritage activities with the clear eye of someone finally emerging from a fog. The investigation moved quickly after that. Other members, sensing the organization was crumbling, came forward with their own testimonies. Financial records revealed decades of tax fraud and misappropriation of funds. Evidence emerged of bribes to local officials to overlook heritage activities. Most damning was what authorities found during a raid of one of my father's remote properties, a laboratory where the ceremonial substances were prepared complete with detailed records of their effects on different family members. 3 weeks after our confrontation at the gala, my father and 5 other heritage leaders were arrested on multiple federal charges. The news broke nationally, exposing the dark underbelly of what had appeared to be a respected genealogical society. My mother, despite her cooperation, struggled with withdrawal from years of substance dependency. She entered a treatment program supported by both Amanda and me as she began the long process of reclaiming her identity. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free of the weight of family expectations and the subtle control that had shaped my decisions even after I'd left home. Jake and I began the process of rebuilding our sense of safety, helping our children understand in age-appropriate ways what had happened with their grandparents. Do you think we'll ever have a normal family again? Amanda asked one evening, as we sat on my porch watching the children play in the yard with their new puppy. I considered the question carefully. I think we'll have something better. A family built on real love and trust, not control and manipulation. I still can't believe Mom stood up to him, she said. I can. Somewhere beneath all those years of conditioning was the mother who wanted to protect her daughters. She just needed help finding her voice again. As summer turned to fall, we began creating new traditions to replace the toxic ones we'd left behind. Sunday dinners where everyone spoke freely. Holidays centered around genuine connection rather than rigid ceremony. A chosen family that included not just blood relatives, but trusted friends who had stood by us through the crisis. My father remained in custody, awaiting trial, refusing all contact. I felt neither hatred nor forgiveness toward him, only a determination that his influence over our family had ended permanently. 1 year after that fateful car trip, when Jake had asked me to turn around, we held our own kind of reunion. Sarah came along with other cousins who had distanced themselves from heritage over the years. My Uncle Robert, my father's brother who had been ostracized decades ago for questioning heritage practices, reunited with my mother for the first time in 20 years. As I watched this gathering of survivors and allies, I felt a deep sense of pride. We had not only escaped a dangerous system of control, but we had dismantled it, preventing it from claiming future generations. Penny for your thoughts, Jake said, joining me by the window as I observed the backyard full of laughter and genuine connection. I was just thinking about that day in the car, I replied. When you asked me to turn around. You trusted me, he said simply, and it saved us all. I leaned against his shoulder, grateful beyond words for the partner who had seen the danger when I couldn't. I never thought standing up to my family would lead to actually saving them. That's the thing about the truth, Jake said. It hurts at first, but it's the only path to real healing. As the evening sun cast golden light across our gathering, I silently renewed my promise to protect this fragile new beginning. We had broken free from generations of control and manipulation. Now we were writing a new story, one built on authentic love, genuine trust, and the courage to question even the most powerful authorities when necessary. Spring arrived with a gentle persistence, much like the healing that had gradually taken root in our lives. The federal case against my father and the other heritage leaders had concluded with multiple convictions. Richard Wilson, once the respected patriarch of our family and a community leader, was now serving a 15-year sentence for financial crimes, conspiracy, and child endangerment. The media interest had eventually faded, allowing our family to rebuild in privacy. My mother, now 8 months into her recovery program, had moved into a small cottage nearby. The woman emerging from decades of chemical and psychological control was someone I was still getting to know. Softer in some ways, stronger in others, with a quiet determination to make amends. On this particular Saturday morning, I sat at our kitchen table reviewing paperwork for the foundation Amanda and I had established to support survivors of high-control groups. The doorbell rang and I opened it to find my mother holding a flowering plant. "I thought your garden could use some color," she said hesitantly still, finding her footing in our new relationship. "It's beautiful. Come in, Mom. Coffee's fresh." As we sat together at the kitchen table, I noticed how the haunted look had faded from her eyes. She still had difficult days, moments when the programming resurfaced, or when guilt overwhelmed her. But she was present in a way she had never been during my childhood. "I met with the support group yesterday," she told me, warming her hands around her coffee mug. "We had 3 new members, former heritage wives. After the arrests, more members had found the courage to leave, many requiring extensive support for substance withdrawal and psychological recovery. My mother had surprised us all by eventually becoming a mentor to other women leaving the organization." "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "How did it go?" "Hard but good. Carolyn, you remember Uncle James's wife? She brought her daughter. First time they've really talked in years." She looked up at me. "They reminded me of us. How far we've come." The back door opened, and Jake entered with Emma and Tyler, flushed from their morning bike ride. "Grandma," Tyler exclaimed, rushing to hug her. My heart warmed at the sight. After months of careful reintroduction and therapy, the children had formed a new, healthier relationship with their grandmother, one based on genuine affection rather than the formal, ritualized interactions of the past. Jake squeezed my shoulder as he passed a silent acknowledgement of how much this normalcy had cost us and how precious it was. "We're meeting Sarah and her family at the park later," I told my mother. "Would you like to join us?" The suggestion would have been unthinkable a year ago. Sarah, having legally changed her name and cut all ties with heritage, had been considered dead to the family. Now she was an integral part of our rebuilt circle. "I'd like that," my mother replied. "Sarah sent me some photos of her children last week. I never thought I'd get to know my great-nieces." As the children disappeared upstairs to change, my mother's expression grew serious. "There's something I wanted to discuss with you and Jake," she said. "The estate." My father's assets had been frozen during the investigation, but my mother's inheritance from her own parents remained intact, including the country estate that had been in her family for generations, the very destination we had been heading toward on that fateful day when Jake had asked me to turn the car around. "What about it?" I asked cautiously. "I've decided to sell it," she said simply. "Too many memories. Too much darkness there. I want to use the proceeds to expand the survivor support programs and set up education funds for all the grandchildren." Jake joined us at the table. "That's a big decision, Margaret." She nodded. "The biggest I've made on my own in 40 years. But it feels right. That place was meant to keep the family legacy alive, but not the legacy we thought." Her voice strengthened. "I want to create a different legacy now, one that helps repair some of the damage." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I think that's perfect, Mom." Later that afternoon, as we gathered at the park with Sarah's family, Amanda and David and several other relatives who had broken free from heritage, I found myself watching the children play with a profound sense of gratitude. Emma and Tyler raced around with their cousins, their laughter carrying on the spring breeze, unconstrained by the weight of toxic traditions or manufactured loyalty. Amanda joined me on the bench, her engagement ring catching the sunlight. She and David were planning a small wedding in the fall, A celebration based entirely on their own wishes, not family expectations or heritage protocols. "Remember when we thought family meant blind obedience?" she asked, following my gaze to the playing children. "And that love was conditional on compliance," I added. "They'll never know that version of family." "Because of you," Amanda said. "You were the one brave enough to turn the car around." "It was Jake who saw the danger first," I reminded her. "But you trusted him enough to listen." That trust saved all of us. As the afternoon wound down, our extended group gathered for a picnic dinner on the sprawling blankets we'd spread across the grass. Looking around at these people who had chosen truth over comfortable lies, freedom over coerced belonging, I felt a surge of pride so intense it brought tears to my eyes. My Uncle Robert raised his paper cup in a toast. "To family, the real kind." "The chosen kind," Sarah added. "The kind worth fighting for." Jake finished, his arm warm around my shoulders. As we drove home that evening, the children drowsy in the back seat, Jake reached for my hand across the console. "Penny, for your thoughts." I smiled, squeezing his hand. I was thinking about trust, how terrifying it can be to really trust someone. To turn the car around when everything you've been taught says to keep going. "Hardest thing in the world," he agreed, "but also the most important." I glanced back at our sleeping children. "That day when you asked me to trust you and turn around, it wasn't just about avoiding danger. It was about choosing a different path entirely." The setting sun painted the road ahead in gold and amber hues. Unlike that day nearly 2 years ago, there was no fear in this journey, only the peaceful certainty that we were heading exactly where we were meant to be. That night, after tucking the children into bed, I sat on our porch swing, watching fireflies begin their evening dance across the lawn. The scars of our ordeal remained. Trust issues that sometimes surfaced in unexpected moments, occasional nightmares, the ongoing legal aftermath. But these were healing wounds, not open ones. We had broken free from a legacy of control and deception that had claimed generations before us. In its place, we were building something authentic, a family bound by genuine love rather than manipulation, by choice rather than coercion. The greatest lesson I'd learned was that real family isn't about bloodlines or heritage or tradition. It's about trust, freely given boundaries, respectfully maintained, and love that empowers rather than controls. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is turn away from the path that's been mapped out for us, even when that path is dressed up as duty or destiny or tradition. Trusting Jake that day had saved us from immediate danger, but the deeper salvation had come from learning to trust myself, to recognize manipulation, to question authority, to defend what truly mattered regardless of the cost. As I sat in the gathering twilight, I felt profound gratitude for the simple freedom to choose my own path, to protect my children from toxic legacies, and to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than power and control. The greatest act of love is sometimes turning away from what hurts us, even when it comes disguised as family tradition. And the greatest legacy we can leave our children is the courage to do the same. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family expectations and protecting yourself or your loved ones? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the bravest thing we do is trust our instincts when something doesn't feel right, even if it means disappointing others. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose a different path. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the wisdom to recognize when it's time to turn your own car around.